It has been a month since the House of Representatives unanimously approved the Police Service Commission's nomination of Allister Guevarro to be the police commissioner of this country. A month later, we are honored to have on the Morning Brew program Police Commissioner Allister Guevarro. Commissioner, good morning. Thank you very much for starting your day with us here on the Morning Brew. We appreciate you making time. What has your first month been like? And I know that's not exactly a month because effective June 18th, you came in to being Commissioner of the country. What has your first month been like?
So good morning. Thank you very much for having me, Ryan. And good morning to your viewership. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Exactly Friday would actually make it 1 month in office. It has been interesting. I love the support that I've been getting from my troops. I love the support that I've been getting from the members of the public as we try to retain and regain the trust of the public in the fight against crime.
What are some of the most pressing issues, if not things, you have uncovered in your first month that you probably didn't know before because you were an intelligence officer before?
Yes. Well, coming from the background that I came from and having the information, one of the surprising things to me would have been the level of angst, the level of anxiousness that pervades in the society with regards to crime and the effects on crime, and more so the fear of crime. And I like to say that crime is a business in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's a business because if you look at the fact that persons who are involved in the security industry, you have persons involved in burglar proofing your homes, steel doors, walls, dogs. We are into the security and feeling and the need to feel safe. And that is something that pervades society, and it comes with a cost. So with that in mind, crime actually is a business. And seeing that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is a part of society, and we are the persons who hold the remit by virtue of the social contract to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago is a safe place. We have a responsibility to the public. We have a responsibility to the citizenry to ensure that everyone feels safe so that the level of fear of crime could be reduced.
All right, let's talk a little bit about public confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I'm not sure if you have a figure that you can give us. I know that there are assessments almost on a year-to-year basis of what the public's trust in the police service is. But aside from the figure, we do know that the police service has there are major concerns from the public as it pertains to the police service. What have you found in your first month, and what are your plans to instill public trust in the police service?
Okay, so I'll start with your last question first. Plans to instill trust into the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I actually, as some people would like to put it, the proverbial hit the ground running. I want the public to see transparency and accountability from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and not just only from the commissioner, but from the persons whom I lead. I want us to get that feeling of safety. I want the public to feel that they are stakeholders in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, so that we could engender that feeling of wanting to see the TTPS function well and do better. The first part of your question, in terms of, what was it again?
The public confidence in the TTPS, it is lacking in many regards. It goes up and then sometimes it plummets.
Right. So when you look at the effect of, as I said, the fear of crime, it's actually worse than crime itself, because persons may want to feel that, and they are, issues of integrity in the police service. We are not going to bury our heads in the sand, but we must treat with those issues of integrity and accountability in the public.
I'm sorry to cut you in, Commissioner, but you've sort of touched on the very nerve of one of the issues. Mm-hmm. Many people, and there are reports that suggest, reports that have been done by brilliant people in this country that suggest that rogue elements within the police service is causing the police service to cave in. Some parts of the police service to almost have a landslide within itself, if you understand what I'm saying. That really is one of the most important factors of your commissionership, dealing with your internal officers within the TTPS.
Yes. Nice that you should mention that, because I always tell persons that the TTPS has always been and continues to be able to police itself. When we determine that there are persons who have those issues, whether be it on the criminal side or the discipline side, we have processes that are in place for treating with it. On the criminal side, we have the Professional Standards Bureau. We actually have the Police Complaints Authority that do investigations alongside or parallel investigations with the TTPS. So we are quite capable of dealing with the criminal side, and you would see that the statistics would prove that we have been able to successfully charge several members of our own department.
How deep do you feel this runs within the TTPS? You were an intelligence officer before you became commissioner, and I know it's still very early days in your time as police commissioner, but how deep do you think this runs in your organization?
Interestingly, the corrupt officers are in the minority, and the very few minority, but because of what they do and the pervasiveness of the effect on the public, then you would find that it is being said that the police service is corrupt. But I would want to assure the members of the public that we are and we have good officers, officers with integrity, officers that are professional, who are able to treat with the situation. But those minority members of the service who seem hell-bent on causing the reputation of the service to be pulled into the mud, we will deal with you.
Do you believe that the police service, and there have been studies and reports, particularly from Professor Ramesh Deosaran, a former PSC member, you know him, a chairman, that the TTPS, it is time for the TTPS to be re-engineered, restructured, reformed?
So we have to understand that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is part of a bureaucratic structure. And despite looking at it as saying it's no quick fix, we can't just throw a button or a switch and realize that all the reforms, all the changes, everything that we need will just come to us. It takes time. It's like a former commissioner of police, Mr. Williams, once said, it's like a large ocean liner. It just can't turn on a button. It takes time to turn.
Do you feel that we have begun the process as a nation, as perhaps as the government, as a TTPS's hierarchy, past and present, your predecessors, that we've begun making that slow turn, that slow maneuver? Because you're saying it's going to take time, but the public, in reality, Commissioner, are desperate for solutions.
And what I would like to reassure you and the public is that even though it would take time for the entire ship to turn, there are certain strategies that are already in place that you may not see and that I may not be able to speak about, that are already going on behind the scenes to ensure that that takes place.
There are some concerns, though, that although you may have begun the tedious, challenging process of reversing and reimagining the image of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, there are concerns that, sometimes the police service takes a step back. Let's head back a little bit to earlier this year and look at the ultimate arrest of former police commissioner Earl Herwood Christopher, and ultimately the director of public prosecution saying, clearing her in the end. How much damage do you feel that would have done to the image of the police service, the work that the police service does? And I ask that in the context that there are everyday people who are being arrested. There are everyday people who are being investigated. And they're saying, but what hope does it have for me if you can't get it right for a former police commissioner?
So it is never a good thing for the leadership of any organization to endure that situation. But what it has shown us is that as a nation, we as the TTPS can withstand that scrutiny, and that we are able to, despite the outcomes or the negative effects, we were able to get the particular body that is responsible for the adjudication of those matters, which is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. It was an open investigation that was done where the entire nation was able to see this play out, and he was able to adjudicate properly according to the law.
But you don't feel that it's an indictment on the TTPS that they've gone to this length and have not been able to prosecute?
Well, what I can tell you, we cannot prosecute something that is not a criminal offense. So if it is that the investigation that was carried out does not yield the threshold for criminal prosecution, then we cannot prosecute someone.
But then it begs the question as well, Commissioner, how did we get to the point of charging the former police commissioner if there was not sufficient evidence that could have led to a prosecution? You realize the gaps that I'm kind of trying to pick apart in the system, and it's not, in hindsight, it's really not about the former police commissioner, but it's about the system as a whole as it pertains to the TTPS moving from arrest to prosecution of any citizen of this country.
All right, so let me correct you. You said charge. She was never charged. The former commissioner of police was being investigated, and the results of that investigation played out into the public.
Right. Let me just correct myself in the sense that there are people who have been charged and ultimately have been cleared by the Director of Public Prosecutions, or in some instances, the police service hasn't been able to nail down the case. Let's take another example. Right now, Suzette Martin, one of your deputies, is currently under investigation. Can you give us an update on that investigation?
Okay. So the investigation of Ms. Martin is being led by Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mr. Kurt Simon. I had a conversation with Mr. Simon as recently as Friday, and we will be visiting the Director of Public Prosecutions for the purpose of getting directions in the matter.
Do you feel, and continue to feel, it's a question you've been asked before, yes, do you feel she should remain on the job while you go to the Director of Public Prosecutions for advice on how to proceed on her investigation?
I would like to defer that the Police Service Commission is the organization that has the responsibility or authority to treat with that aspect of it.
Are you comfortable with one of your officers who's being investigated, working under you, working closely under you because she's your deputy, working under you during such an investigation?
Police officers, and especially the ones that I work with, are all professionals. And my ability to function and carry out my responsibilities will not be affected.
Before I move on to another topic that's very important to both you and the nation, I do want to talk about what happened in Gonzales a few days ago, the uproar that happened over there, and the response from the TTPS. Do you have any update on that? I know that you would have asked certain questions of your officers.
What we did in the Gonzales area, well, the Greater Belmont and even the Port of Spain area, Senior Superintendent of the Port of Spain Division, Mr. Raymond Tong, would have placed additional manpower, boots on the ground, increased the police presence, and we have an active both overt and covert operations in train as we speak to treat with the situation.
As we speak, we understand that there might have been 3 homicides in that same area over the weekend.
Yes, this was yesterday.
Yeah. On the one hand, you're telling us that there are more operations within that particular community, Commissioner, but still there's this level of homicide. How does the TTPS explain such a rationale?
We have observed that, and not only in Belmont, but throughout the entire country, we are coming out of the state of emergency. And historically, when you recall 2011, when we had that state of emergency, as well as 2020 and 2021, when we were also under a state of emergency, there was a marked reduction in homicides as well as other violent crime. The immediate effect, as the statistics would show, that coming out of the state of emergency, there was what persons may term as an upsurge. We see it as a return to some sort of normal criminality, because the restrictions that the SOE had were removed or lifted. Thus, I would be very cautious in saying that we had an upsurge or a spike.
So is it that this country, Commissioner, for the most part, each year has to live under some state of emergency restrictions to enjoy some level of comfort? Because outside of an SOE, as you've just admitted, there is an uptick in crime, almost as though it's the norm in this country.
What happens during a state of emergency is that the police and even law enforcement, we are given some additional powers, and some of the rights of citizens are removed. So a police officer can go and enter your home without a warrant. And those are the situations that present itself as having a little more power for the police to treat with crime. Currently, the process for taking out warrants is one that is somewhat tedious, and we are currently engaging with the government to treat with that. We have, there were orders of detention utilized in the last SOE. There was no curfew, but it had the desired effect that we were able to detain and place away from the public those persons who were hell-bent on carrying out criminal activities.
But an overarching success over the last SOE, that might be difficult for you to call an overarching success, because immediately after the SOE, you've admitted that in keeping with traditional statistics, there's been an upsurge in crime once more, in homicides, really.
Yes, and that is something that, you know, we will look at holistically. As I said, in 2011, it occurred. In 2020 and 21, it also occurred. And you are seeing the statistics also from 2025.
Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the present administration. Stand your ground legislation will come into effect. It is the aim of the government to bring it into effect at some point in the next session of Parliament. Will that help or harm the work the TTPS does?
The only way we'll be able to determine if it will help or harm is after it is put into effect.
Do you support it?
I support any legislation that would assist the members of the public in protecting themselves.
So you think stand your ground legislation will be able to help members of the public defend themselves in situations of home invasions, etc., and really pick up where the TTPS may not be able to?
I would reiterate again, I would support not just only stand your ground, but any legislation that would allow for persons to lawfully protect themselves.
Roger Alexander, a former colleague of yours in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, now the Minister of Homeland Security. What has that working relationship been like? Has it been helpful to have a former TTPS officer as the Minister of Homeland Security?
The working relationship with Mr. Alexander and myself has been exceptional. We have had several meetings thus far in treating with particular issues that have come to the fore. I would envision that under my leadership of the TTPS and his stewardship of the Ministry of Homeland Security, we will begin to see some changes very soon.
He's called for patience over the weekend at a health fair he was hosting in his constituency of Tunapuna. And obviously that's always a very tricky term to use when it comes to crime fighting in this country, when you ask the public to be patient, because you as Commissioner already know that the public has run out of patience many years ago as it pertains to crime. But how far into the future, Commissioner, can this country expect an impact on the measures that you are saying that both the TTPS and the Homeland Security Ministry have been taking?
The situation thus far is not one that came into the public sphere within the last year or the last 2 years or the last 5 years. This is something that has, the crime situation that is something that has been pervasively getting worse over the past 20 years, 25 years. And as I said, it's not like we could just throw a switch or press a magic button or wave a magic wand and solve the problems overnight. We are looking at holistic, both current and holistic long-term strategies that would not only reduce crime now, but ensure that it is maintained for the future.
Yeah. One of the challenges and criticisms of the TTPS is in keeping with modern day, not only technology, but I also want to talk a little bit about intelligence, because the fight against crime, I've read in many columns and in many opinions, is really based on intelligence as well in the 21st century. You, of course, being a former intelligence officer yourself. Have we adequately used intelligence? Do we know how to infiltrate those communities, those hotspot communities, with intelligence and extract intelligence out of those communities to help the TTPS better deal with homicides and deal with potential criminal activity? What are your opinions on the use of intelligence, and where do we really need to go in terms of the use of intelligence in the crime fight in this country?
We need to direct intelligence more along the pathway of technical and technological aids, having it work together in unison with human intelligence. Thus, we can begin to have methods of predictive policing coming into play. So, take for instance, if you have an AI model predictive intelligence tool, such as what exists elsewhere in the world, like Predpol or Laser or any one of those, IUN in Dubai, you would then have that particular piece of technology or software getting inputs from the data of human intelligence as well as the data that currently exists, where we could start doing crime mapping, tracking of criminals, and you have other aspects. You have persons with ankle monitoring, you have CCTV footage, we have vehicle database information. We have all of these things coming together where we could now begin to see intelligence take a different role in how we treat with crime and criminality and the response to crime. All of those put together, working in collaboration with a proper patrol policy and model for Trinidad and Tobago, we will begin to see greater effect on reducing crime.
When you say proper patrol model, can you expand on what that means for the country? Because that's another criticism that the police service has faced. We don't see police officers in the places that we ought to see them or as often as we want to see them. And now you're talking about a proper patrol system. What does that look like to you across both islands?
Right. A proper patrol model, there was one introduced called the active directed patrols. What that does is, and I don't want to give too much of information out to the public, it places police resources at particular places at particular times. It amalgamates an old strategy utilized called hotspot policing, as well as the new active directed policing model, so that we can have resources placed and intersect at particular areas so that we have a greater presence on the nation's roads.
I want to talk about two quick things, Commissioner. I imagine we'd have to wrap the interview soon. One of those things is what you talked about in your inauguration speech on June 18th at the Handing Over Parade. You mentioned school violence. The Prime Minister over the last week said that in the new academic year, police officers will be placed in schools that are high risk. What is your reaction to that?
We have already received a list of the high-risk schools, and at this time, the TTPS actively engaging in training of officers to take up those positions. So I'd like to reassure the public that the TTPS stands ready to take back the schools from the violent elements that exist.
Can you give us that number of schools that you would have had on your desk, and perhaps even some of the schools that are under concern?
I wouldn't want to divulge the names of the schools at this point in time. They're numbering around 40 in total.
And this is across both islands?
Yes, sir.
Right. School violence, it's one thing to have police officers in schools. Do you feel that will create, there are negative psychological impacts to that, or do you think that can really hone in the challenges certain schools are facing? Do you have any concerns about placing your officers in schools?
Well, TTPS has already been in schools. We visit schools and do lectures. We visit schools through the community.
But this is there. I'm not sure if they'll be armed. I'm not sure how it's going to happen. But this is your police officers there to actively almost guard against violence in schools, particularly during
every
breaks.
single school in Trinidad and Tobago currently have security officers.
Right, but these are police officers whose job is to ensure that students don't fight with each other, don't fight against other schools. Do you have any concerns about placing your officers in such an environment where really it should not be about that?
Well, Ryan, think about it this way. You have children?
No, I don't.
Okay. You have nephews, nieces?
Of course.
Wouldn't you feel safer with them knowing that they are in schools?
I'm not disagreeing. It's not my prerogative to agree or disagree with any of the decisions. But it is, surely it must, as police commissioner, how do you, what I'm getting at is, those things surely are not long-term solutions.
No, definitely
There has
not.
to be something that takes us back to a point where schools can effectively teach our children and then send them back home.
But in the meantime, I want to ensure that those who are there in those educational institutions, who are there for the purpose of learning, are able to do so free of the fear of bullying, of violence when you're exiting the school or entering the school, and that we have that level of comfort so that they will be able to carry out the function that they are there for, including the teachers. We have had instances where teachers have been attacked by students. We have instances where parents are coming outside the schools to wait on teachers because they had an interaction that was not favorable with the child. So I want those schools to be safe, the environment of learning to be safe. And I would support any decision taken by the government to ensure that that takes place.
Body cameras. I want to talk about body cameras as one of my last points. The Ministry of Homeland Security confirming that it has ordered thousands of body cameras to assist, to be pinned on to police officers, especially those in the line of duty. There are some body cameras, hundreds of body cameras for the TTPS officers in Trinidad. How many of them have actually been used has always been a point of concern. You are hoping, I'm guessing, by the end of this year that every police officer who goes out on duty will be able to have a body camera pinned to their uniform.
Yes, I would. Body cams would only assist the TTPS in maintaining that level of accountability and transparency. And I would urge my officers, I have used them in the past, I have used them to do interviews with persons who have been arrested. I've used them on exercises and operations. So there's no fear of the body cams. All it does is show the public that we can carry out our functions in a transparent manner where we can be held accountable.
Commissioner, are you willing to move from urging your police officers to mandating them when they get it? Because the government has invested in thousands, has spent millions on thousands of body cameras. You have to use them when going out. Are you willing to go that far?
In fact, we have gone that way already. We already have a body cam policy in place, and we have the disciplinary process that is also in place. So if it is that police officers are not utilizing the equipment that was purchased for them at much expense to the public, then we'll have to treat with it in a different way.
And that includes disciplinary action. Right. Final point, Commissioner. FULs. Over the last 2 weeks, you mentioned that you were working very late into the night to relieve a backlog of FUL applications. Where are you at in terms of that? And are you concerned, alarmed, surprised at the number of applications you have received from people across both islands?
The nice part about it is, as I always said, my desk is clear. I do not keep those files. I adjudicate upon them and send them back out. I have not noticed any new applications since my taking office, any new applications coming to my desk as yet, because they are still in processing stages. So I'm dealing, as you said, with the backlog of the applications that currently exist. I gave instructions to have those backlogged applications that have current information, meaning that the certificates of character are current, the letters of recommendation from your spouses are current, the medical certificates and psychometric examinations are current. They are the ones that I am treating with, adjudicating upon, and...
Very quickly, because I know we have to head to the 7 a.m. news, Commissioner, but does it concern you when you are signing off on these applications and the number and the backlog that you speak of, that you are allowing so many more guns onto the streets, and there are going to be much more? Let's just take, for instance, when Stand Your Ground legislation is enacted, there are going to be so many more applications coming before you. Does it concern you that there are going to be so many more guns on the streets, and that's one of your problems, guns on the streets in this country?
I like how you said that. Application does not mean approval. Adjudication means that the persons who deserve a firearm user's license will get a firearm user's license. It's not like everyone can apply and just get a gun. You must pass, I would like to say, the acid test.
Police Commissioner Allister Guevarro, we do appreciate you. We know it's the start of a very, very long day for you today, but we appreciate you starting your day with us here on the Morning Brew. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Allister Guevarro talking to us, the Police Commissioner talking to us as he heads to a month in office as Police Commissioner of this country. Let's head to the 7 o'clock news. We'll come back.